did. In a big way. I mean, obviously, that was the beautiful part, was being able to, I mean, the magical part of this for, I think, all of us who worked on it, was being able to live with Brian's music for 3 years, you know, just kind of immerse yourself in that whole time. And so obviously we wanted Brian's music to be a big part of it. When you get to the soundtrack or the score part of it, you know, we talked to a lot of musicians actually that are big Brian Wilson fans. Problem was they were almost too big Brian Wilson fans. They wanted to do either kind of a tribute to or something like that. And the first person actually I talked to that we really connected with was Atticus Ross, who, by the way, I think did an incredible job here. But what he got immediately was, there were two things we wanted to do. One was to try to capture what, you know, Brian hears or heard in his head, kind of all these harmonies and voices and all kinds of things mixed up. And we talked about, Atticus and I sat down originally and kind of used Revolution Number 9 and the Beatles' White Album as a kind of a template. And he started going from there. But then when it came to the score, we talked about, again, not wanting to compete with Brian's music. How are you ever going to do that? So what he did, and I think so brilliantly, was taking individual stems of Brian's music and reworking them, reweaving them into the score that there is. So pretty much everything you hear score-wise is Brian's voice and Brian's instruments just rearranged, remixed.
We'll take some questions from the audience. Now there's mics up front if you want to come up and ask. Yes.
Hi. Real quick, we went to buy a ticket. They said they were free, courtesy of Brian. So thank you, everyone. My question was for John. I know you probably met with Brian and watched like footage to try and like get like his mannerisms and behavior down. I was just wondering, did you meet with Paul at all and like study like his performance with his mannerisms to try and like match like what he was doing on screen? It's real quick, I'm from Chicago too, so he comes from side.
I'm both Chicago. I'm both sides. Paul and I actually, there was no sort of dictum about it or rule about it, but we didn't really talk that much because we thought that we wanted our instincts and impressions just to be unique, and then we thought maybe together it would add maybe be one full tapestry. You can never, you know, capture someone's life in one film or one novel or anything. It's a life is too big, but if we could give the feeling and impression of different phases of his life through his music. I took all my cues from his music, and just from being Melinda and Brian being gracious enough to let me talk to them, come to their home, things of that nature.
Yes, thank you.
Hi, this is for John. I feel like you play a lot of fictional tortured characters. So how is it different preparing for something that's such a true story?
Well, you know, it's Brian's life and it's Melinda's life, and it's this legacy that they have. So I was very sort of humbled and honored to do it. And as long as Brian and Melinda were happy, I was going to be happy. I knew that was going to be the most important audience for us, I think.
This is a question for Brian. I've been a huge fan since my brother introduced me to your music, and I'm wondering, how were you brave enough to give your story to someone, and were you worried about how you would portray it?
Well, I was worried from the start because, you know, I didn't know what to expect. You know, we initially heard the script reading from the actors and actresses in Warner Brothers in Hollywood, and from that point on, I had nothing to do with the movie. You know, my wife worked with Bill, but I didn't get to really be a part of the production.
How did you feel seeing it?
I was overwhelmed. Yeah.
Thank you.
He did come by the studio one day when we were working. You remember, you came to visit a few times that were very magical. So he was with us all the time.
Yes, over here.
Yeah, okay, that was the best movie I've seen in a long time. I have a question for the director, as far as your vision and everything. There were a couple parts that I thought were really cool, kind of like subliminal symbolism, or like maybe little truth nuggets you hid beneath the surface or something. It was like the part with the deep end, where, you know, they're too shallow to be in the deep end. Brian's in the deep end. The part where they're in the part towards the end where they're in the recording studio and Gene is on the other side. Like, as far as those moments go, like, do you have a sort of creative process for crafting those storytelling elements, or do they just kind of happen and like flow?
Both. Certainly, I think, you know, you kind of, when you're preparing, you come up with some of those ideas and they kind of are implanted in your mind. I mean, different directors do it differently. I didn't have a big book that I, you know, had everything in. I guess this was the book, and you're kind of hoping that on the day you can keep it spontaneous by calling on those ideas and then also developing them as the time goes. So certainly we're too shallow for the deep end was not spontaneous. That was definitely in the script.
But I'll sing his praises because he can't sing his own praises. But you know, it takes a lot of courage and a lot of sophistication to have a plan, but then come in and start working with actors and then follow an impulse or an intuition or a mood, and then have the entire film kind of go around that. And I think as actors, we always felt like the character obviously was the most important thing, and we never felt like we had to fit into a scheme that had already been laid out. He let the movie come to him and find it, and so he's a terrific, wonderful director. Very sophisticated.
Yes, over here.
This is a question that's kind of, you know, it's movie related, but it's really for Brian. In the movie, they even talk about Rubber Soul's influence on Pet Sounds. I grew up in America. The U.S. version of Rubber Soul is very different than, you know, well, not very different, but different than the British version. Always wondered which version inspired you. Were you the U.S. version or the British version?
The U.S. version.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Like you, Dr. Black, this movie means the world to me. Brian's music means the world to me, and I cried all throughout today. I flew to London for the Smile premiere, and it changed my life, and I went to 4 shows, and I'm here from Georgetown, Texas, so I flew there and saw 4 shows, and just to see Van Dyke Parks and everyone in the audience, and Brian crying, and Melinda, it was a life-changing experience. And then 2 months ago, I saw in Vegas the No Peer Pressure preview concert on December 12th, and I can't wait for your birthday show, June 20th at the Greek Theater. Can you please tell everyone the sequel about the new album, No Peer Pressure, and what's coming up from Brian? Love you, Brian. No Peer Pressure. Album comes out in April, No Peer Pressure. June tour starts for about 25 days. Make sure No Peer Pressure is #1 on the charts. Brian, we love you very much.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
This is for Brian. I just want to say also, like so many people probably in here, your music has saved my life so many times. And honestly, I was just wondering, was it surreal or weird to watch the movie? And also, what is your favorite scene to watch in the film?
Favorite what?
Favorite scene in the film?
In the film? When Wouldn't It Be Nice came on. John and Elizabeth were getting off on each other.
Yes, please.
Something I was curious about is, in the film, there's kind of a prominent credit for Joanna Going as Audrey Wilson, but I don't recall seeing her in the movie. So was that just something I overlooked, or is that because of scenes that ended up not making it into the final cut?
I know she's actually in the movie, but clearly not as much as we had hoped she would be. This is one of these things with movies like this where you're trying to bite off so much of somebody's life and so much great material that unfortunately, we had to downplay the Murray and Audrey thing a little bit. But she was fantastic. She's a great actress. Sorry that whenever you have to make those kind of decisions, it's not a fun thing, but she was great.
Okay, we only have time for 2 more questions. Sarah?
Hi, I just want to say it's a masterful film. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And this one's for both Bill and Claire. I'm just curious, Bill, I know Bill is a producer and quite an extraordinary one. And I just think you're an amazing director too. So I'm curious if you had to if there was a struggle between your producer brain and your director brain, and Claire, if that was a struggle for you as well, if it added any difficulty to your work or a great joy to your work.
No, actually, we got along really well, I thought. And it was really a lovely experience. I mean, Bill wore both hats, I thought, really well, and it's challenging to do that, and I thought you did it elegantly, and you can see from the film, it really worked out.
Well, but back at you guys, because I really, it's hard to be a producer at the same time, or at least think that same way. You gotta, it's the film first, and the things you envision for the film first versus thinking about, can we do that or not? You need somebody else to be able to say that kind of stuff. Otherwise, you limit yourself too much, as you know.
Thank you. Rachel?
Thanks, Liz. Incredibly powerful film about Brian's musical genius, but the piece that was missing for me was how it was possible for someone as powerful and privileged as Brian to fall into a situation like he did with his therapist. I mean, it's a lesson for a lot of people, and I'd love to hear that piece of it if you can tell it. Thank you.
Well, I don't want to speak for Brian or what he experienced. Clearly, again, Brian's life was so filled with great stuff and very challenging stuff that it was hard to pick and choose between them, and we really did have to limit ourselves in that way. So yeah, a lot of people think, well, why didn't we see more of Brian in bed, or why didn't we see, how the family dealt with that? My understanding was just, it's a tough thing to deal with, and I think that's what we are trying to say with this movie, beyond just making a great tribute to Brian and his music, is that, everybody has different ways of approaching life and different experiences and different dynamics going on in their lives, and we have to be able to appreciate them and kind of take the time with them to care for all that, because we're all coming from different directions. It's so easy to think, oh, this guy's acting weird, we should just push him off to somebody else. It's easy for us when we're kind of, in those positions to try to push it away, and it's more about embracing, those challenges rather than pushing them away. So.
Well, thank you. I thank you, Brian, for an extraordinary night of brilliant music. And thank you guys for bringing this incredible movie here.